I'm very pleased to welcome back my next guest. Ken Silva is joining us again. People are going to remember Ken was with us about a week ago after a right to know action that he had filed yielded some results. Ken, you brought us the Thomas Crooks autopsy. You've got some new information to report to us today. How you feeling, Ken?
Not too bad. Yeah, we've got 3 or 4 open right to know law requests, and it's almost getting to the point where it's hard to track what I've requested and what each status is, but hopefully we can get through it and give your viewers some new info.
Yeah. So you've just received a trove of documents, some of which, correct me if I'm wrong, you haven't even released yet. We're going to be showing people for the first time on this broadcast. Is that correct?
Yeah, and these documents come from the Pittsburgh police, which had kind of a relatively minor and tangential role in the security failures at Butler. And in fact, I don't think Pittsburgh had anything to do with the actual failures, which is what we can get into. But there was some controversy over whether a motorcycle unit was supposed to be protecting Trump or Jill Biden, who was having an event on the same day.
Ooh.
And it seems like there's been some political backlash behind the scenes where the motorcycle unit has since been disbanded over this controversy. I don't know if there's some anti-Trump people high up in the Pittsburgh police or what exactly happened. But yeah, well, we can get into it.
This is amazing. So we heard about this motorcycle unit. John Cullen has been talking about how apparently one officer in the motorcycle unit was hit by shrapnel or something like that. Now this is some sort of a Zoom call, or you've got actual dialogue from a recorded call where people are talking about how the motorcycle unit has been disbanded. What's with this, Ken? Are the police chopping off their nose to spite their face? They're acting like 5-year-olds. They take their toys and go home?
It's hard to tell exactly what's going on. The Zoom meeting that I posted just before this show was from the Pittsburgh Citizen Police Review Board, which has opened up an investigation into who authorized this motorcycle unit to be at the Trump rally, and I guess why this decision was made. Because like I mentioned earlier, supposedly some people are saying that the motorcycle unit should have escorted Trump to Butler and then gone back to Pittsburgh to help Jill Biden. That didn't happen. And when the shooting occurred, 4 Pittsburgh police officers were actually hit with shrapnel. I think 3 of them had to go to the hospital for relatively minor injuries. But they, by all accounts, by the records that I've reviewed, they performed quite admirably, assisting with the serious shooting victims and helping them get them to Allegheny Hospital in the Pittsburgh area. Allegheny Hospital sent out an email lauding their performance, but yet in the days after, the unit was disbanded, and now this Citizens Review Board is investigating the situation. The Pittsburgh Police Bureau told me this morning that we, quote, decentralized the unit to be more efficient. It has nothing to do with the Trump rally. So there's a lot more to the story, and hopefully people will continue to investigate in Pittsburgh.
Ken, it's amazing. You've unraveled kind of an element of this story that, I don't know, maybe nobody was even looking at or thinking about. But you know something? I personally believe that these sort of details, pulling the threads of these sort of things are going to unravel the whole entire sweater. Now, this is an opinion question, but just from what you're telling us, it sounds to me almost like somebody was angry at this motorcycle police unit and that they're now taking retribution by disbanding them. Maybe they screwed up the plan by being there.
Yeah, that's a fair question to ask. Remember that as you and I have discussed privately, these officers who were hit with shrapnel have body cam footage that would presumably show where they were standing and possibly show the angle from which they were hit, which might play into your friend John Cullen's second shooter theory,
Right.
depending on what the results would be. Again, as we've discussed, so the right to know law stipulates that you have to request the body cam footage within 60 days of the event happening. You and I, we both put in our request to get this body cam footage. We're outside of the 60-day threshold, but hopefully they'll comply with the spirit of transparency and give us this footage, which might be a really, a game changer, I think.
Yeah. And, it's my understanding, I'm not an attorney. I believe you're not an attorney. I could be wrong, but it's my understanding that once the 60 days hits, it's not like you're dead in the water. It just, that becomes a reason that they may deny. So there are exemptions and ways around it. Before we get too much further into the conversation, I want to remind people that if you're not already following Ken on X, I think you should do that. He's there at JD_cashless. You can read his posts and updates. You can also find Ken's writing on headlineusa.com. He's writing all kinds of articles that are definitely going to be of interest to Crowdsource the Truth viewers. So Ken, let's just get back to this motorcycle unit thing for a second. What do you think about actually playing this Zoom call so people can hear the full context of it, and then we talk about it some more?
Yeah, I think this would be useful. And this audio comes from Beth Pittinger, who is the executive director of the review board. And she spoke last night about they just opened an investigation into this whole issue of whether the cops were actually supposed to be in Butler.
Wow, just last night. This is an amazing breaking story. Let's listen to the Zoom call. Now, just give us the background. What is this? This is the civilian review board for the cops in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, they do things like investigate police brutality and corruption and issues like this. And I think this is a case of alleged insubordination.
See, it's important also for people to, I don't know anything about this civilian review board, but in New York with the NYPD, this is not the Internal Affairs Bureau. It's literally citizens who participate. It's almost like a city council kind of a thing. I don't know if people get elected to this or how you get on it, but it is intended to be an independent board that has, I guess, some authority to do something. Let's listen to what this civilian review board had to say about all this motorcycle stuff.
They were representing the Bureau of Police. Whether they were there authorized or not is still a question. What supervisor was responsible for authorizing them to go? And then escorting was one thing, staying at the event was another. So far as we know, there were disciplinary actions taken. As a result of that, the motorcycle unit was broken up. It was busted up. There's no supervisor assigned to it, as I understand it now. They assigned them all to the downtown unit or sent them out, dispersed them to the zones. So where we used to have a discrete motorcycle unit, we don't anymore. They're all over the place. A lot of things happen.
But they were on duty. I mean, they were assigned that, right?
No,
By
that's the
somebody.
controversy. And
Yeah.
they are recognized as being there as Pittsburgh police officers. So we would have to say they were on duty because the chief made a public comment that they were going to be recognized as such, even though there's questions about how they got there in the first place. So the issue, it moves up to a supervisory issue. Who said they could go and who said they could stay? There are supervisors that were in that unit that were removed from that unit. I think there was a demotion. That demotion may not have stuck. The lieutenant and sergeant, they were pulled out of there. And I don't believe there's a sergeant or a lieutenant assigned to a discrete motorcycle unit anymore. So it's a yes and a no, Mr. Davis. It's yes, they were there as Pittsburgh police officers, but there's a lot more to the story.
And just for clarity, I don't know if you have the answer. What is the normal procedure for when the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police escorts a dignitary such as a presidential candidate or someone of that nature?
There's a dignitary protection unit in the Bureau. They have a standard process. They have to be requested. Somebody has to make an official law enforcement request. Like the Secret Service could ask the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police, would you please assist us with this? And they will do that. They can't just decide on their own. They're going to go and lend a hand to the Secret Service or to Pennsylvania State Police or or, on
Sheriff's
their own
office.
decide that mutual aid is needed and they're going to go and give it. There has to be an official request for that kind of an activity, for dignitary protection or engagement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to further that, I'm presuming, but maybe I shouldn't, that in that request, they would specify what their.
Ken, that's amazing right there. The thing that stuck in my ear the most was the woman leading the call saying, there's much more to this story than meets the eye.
And her review board is subject to the right to know law. So presumably we'll be able to, when their investigation is finished, we can request the records that they obtained, and maybe we can get to the bottom of this. What stood out to me is the pre-planning chaos, the question of whether they were supposed to be in Butler at all. Well, one of the emails that I actually haven't released, but I sent to you, and we will both release it after this show, is on July 8th, the Secret Service had one of the first pre-planning meetings for Butler, and the Pittsburgh police were at that meeting, which occurred at noon. Immediately at 2 p.m. after that meeting, Lieutenant, I think Charles Henderson of the Pittsburgh police blasted out an email to all his officers saying, we have the schedule for Trump rally, but we still don't know when Jill Biden is going to arrive, what airport, and where she's going. So
Wow.
It seems like they
What?
actually had their ducks in a row for the Trump rally. That was already approved.
Wait, hang on.
Rally.
Let me stop you a second. Are they picking up somebody's airhead 20-year-old girlfriend or the First Lady of the United States? They don't know where she's going or what the schedule is. What is this?
And that's, you talk about all these threads that we really have to pull on. I think it's about time that we investigate the Jill Biden event and exactly how that was planned in relation with Trump, because it seems like just people had no idea what was going on for both events.
That's amazing. You're right, Ken. I love the unusual angles that you are uncovering here. People have got to follow Ken on X. And I mean, if you're watching us on anything other than X and you're not following me at JG_CSTT, you're missing quite a lot of the discussion. Ken, this is absolutely amazing evidence that you are uncovering. And there's nothing magical here. You're just doing the hard work of filing these documents and following up with everybody. So you've sent me this. This is like a schedule of the radio timeline. Where do you want to go next? There's so much stuff for us to look at here.
Oh, this is a big one. So this is a record I've been trying to get for over 2 months since the Washington Post reported on, they published, one of the bigger stories of this whole case, the infamous radio call from Greg Nichols saying, he's going around the building up to Sheets, explaining kind of how the local police lost crooks. Well, they cited a transcript of encrypted local law enforcement radio communications. And I said, well, how did the Post get this transcript? I filed a request with Butler County. They denied me, saying, we don't hold this transcript. You have to go through the Butler DA. I argued against it, eventually lost the appeal. But then when I asked for the transcript from Butler DA, they gave it to me in about 2 days. And the transcript is packed full of interesting information that we really haven't discussed yet, such about like who radioed that the shooter was down. Was that Merkel and Nickel? Well, now we know it was Mirko. But I think the biggest thing to note about this transcript is at the very top, it says this is not an official transcript. It was compiled, I think, by Butler ESU, just kind of to give people an idea of what happened. But there's entire communication logs that are missing. And for example, the biggest one I see, Commander Ed Lenz, the commander of the Butler ESU, at 6:07, he's on the Ops 4 channel, and he says something. They should have a fairly good perimeter, around the AGR building. This is when they're looking for crooks. And then we don't know what he says next on the Ops 4 channel. It goes from log 263, and jumps all the way to, I think, log 266. So there's
Wow.
like two or three communications that aren't even listed in the transcript, stuff that'll be crucial for us to tell, what he was telling Greg, Nickel, and Mirko, or Mirko and Nickel responding, what were they saying? These are things we still need to know.
That's amazing, Ken. You're really digging into the details here. Well done. So, I mean, it's interesting to see how the people who want to hide this information from us can just pull, one line out of this transcript and just have that little caveat there that says, hey, this isn't the legal transcript. And then suddenly the Washington Post and Headline USA and whoever gets fooled by this transcript, or perhaps the Washington Post is playing a role in doing the fooling, you might look at this and say, oh, well, nothing to see here. Let's move on to the next story. You're doing incredible work, man. I love it. So what else have we got here?
And it's shame on the Washington Post for not publishing this record at the time. I think
Right.
people would have been able to take what's being reported for a grain of salt and ask, we need to see the full, all the communications. And because my question is, this transcript was also obtained by the House Task Force, and Clay Higgins included it in his preliminary findings. He cites the transcript, but does he even know that this is an unofficial and incomplete document? Like, I'm not clear on what he knows.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would love to meet with somebody like Clay Higgins, not even necessarily to be on C-SPAN or go on TV, but I mean, he's said a number of things. I think he's trying to get to the bottom of this, but he's one guy and he's operating within a swamp. As you said, I mean, this is a hell of a lot of information to go through, Ken, and it's confusing in its layout. This is a format. I mean, this isn't like a novel. A lot of people will look at this and their head will spin. Higgins is a former law enforcement officer, so perhaps this is a type of document he's used to looking at, but this is one of these situations where these agencies are perhaps, papering us up so much that it's, just throw so much information at you that it's hard to parse through. And as we were discussing, they just eliminate one line. It's like pulling the needle out of a haystack and then sending you to go search for a needle in the haystack.
Yeah, exactly. And while we were speaking, I guess another big thing that stuck out to me in this transcript is that, like I mentioned, we now know that Mirko was the one who, I think at like 6:12, he radios that the shooter is down. So he had to have been, if my understanding is correct, he was up in that second floor looking out the window. He had to have been to be able to radio that the shooter is down. And his commander, Ed Lenz, says, command copies, shooter down. Let me know, what do you guys need? Do you need EMS for you? And Mirko responds, negative, I'm not hit. I'm not sure where 4D Sierra is. 4D Sierra, I think, is Nickel. So that's interesting. Mirko actually didn't know where Nickel was at the time of the shooting.
Or he's saying that. He could just be saying that because, you see, I feel like
Sure.
It's possible that Nickel and Mirko knew all about this. We know that the photographs that were texted that I've included here in the thumbnail today, we know that these photographs were taken by Greg Nickel. And what's interesting is, these are the photographs that set off this wild goose chase around the building where all these cops can't seem to find one 20-year-old kid. I find it interesting that 3 pictures are sent right in a row, and maybe you would do this, that they're all sent all at once and they're all sent at 5:45 to 8 people. But I don't know, you put together a big multi-person text like this. Sometimes you're attaching the picture, adding names. I could see that, taking one goes at 5:45, one goes at 5:46. There's so many things about this that make me feel like this was a setup. Like this picture of Crooks could have been taken the day before, and then Nickel and Mirko, I'm speculating right now, of course, but there's a lot of questions here, and I think that gives us a right and an opportunity to speculate. But what if they took the pictures the day before, and Mirko and Nickel had this plan where Nickel says, I'm going to send these photographs and I'm going to leave the building. You get on the radio and you say, you don't know where I am. We're just going to create this 20-minute delay while somebody goes down into the first floor to fire this infrared laser, which is maybe going to get sensed by a drone or trigger some simultaneous suppressed shot. Ken, I don't know if you heard this detail, but on Friday's show with John Cullen, we reviewed some more of the testimony of the Hercules snipers, and the Hercules snipers say they believe they were being shot at with suppressed fire. So it's not just John Cullen saying that, it's eyewitness expert snipers who were in the line of fire. So again, it brings me back to this laser in the window, which could have been, I mean, if we've got simultaneous suppressed fire, right? Gunshots that have no bang when they're fired, or comparatively no bang. That sounds to me like a magic trick, like somebody is setting something up to fool you. Look over here at the sound, not over here where the actual shot comes from. And magic tricks often require, technological things that people aren't aware of to make something seem like magic when it obviously isn't. So, it takes me back to this laser in the window that I identified a while ago that I think is being operated by, it's got to be Nickel. This thing is, it goes off at the precise moment that they're telling us that Trump was shot. 6/11/33. We've got 6 video frames of a completely stationary dot inside that room. It only moves a little tiny bit in the last frame, causing that motion blur. But you see, this circle shows the stabilized video. And what the stabilization shows us is that the dot is not moving in the room, even though the camera is moving a lot. So something is going on in that building, and it seems that the only 2 people in there at that moment are Mirko and Nickel. And then Nickel walks out less than 2 minutes after this, and this guy doesn't know where he is. What's going on in that building, Ken?
Really, really bizarre. And I'll just piggyback off that. And remember, the public would still be under the impression that Nickel first identified Crooks at 4:26, if not for a rally goer's video that showed Crooks. I don't know if you think it was actually Crooks, but they showed the guy on the whole other site at 4:26. So whoever Nickel and Mirko were talking about at 4:26 could not have been Crooks, because or whoever we think that was actually on the other side of the entire site, like a half mile away. And that, again, I guess that lends to your theory that, were they trying to cover their ass and say, yeah, we actually did spot them and try to get them as early as 4:30. I don't want to impugn any motives with them, but again, we'd still be under the impression that is the true story, if not for that random video showing Crooks on the whole other site. Another thing that...
Wait, let's not move off of that yet, because that's important. So you're talking about a video that was posted by this account, Ironclad USA, which claims to be, this is some sort of clothing business. Fight for America. They had, this is Drive Like You Stole It. So this is supposedly, Trump merch, but it's got pictures of Joe Biden on it. I don't know. This guy was selling hats and stuff, and he is the one who, he posted this video, I think. Is this the one? Yeah.
That's the one, yeah.
Now, the thing is, I do not think that that's Crooks, but this is still worth looking at because he posted it. He made a big deal out of it. This is another guy who I said, hey, this is super interesting footage that you've got. Can you please upload the original file? And he refused to do it. Now, I forget this guy's name right now, but it was a pretty unique name. And when I started looking into him, the only person I found with the exact same name was a police officer in California. Now, this guy's body type, to me, looks a hell of a lot more beefy than Thomas Crooks. And I just do not believe that you're getting to this sort of broad shoulder, thicker arm build in 1 year after high school. And by the way, how does it compare to the skinny arms on this guy? It's not the same guy. It's definitely not the same guy. And to me, this video, the build of this character looks a hell of a lot more like Yurik. And so, you know, I think people are very aware that there's lots and lots of AI tools, even that you can use on your cell phone, that give very convincing facial replacement results. I actually, right after that video was published, I did just a little AI test. I don't know if you've seen this, Ken. Let me show you this. I created this video in part to demonstrate how easy it is to create AI videos that could fool people into thinking somebody was somewhere that they weren't. Let's just watch this for a second.
Fox News exclusive. A new report out tonight from Senator Ron Johnson reveals the Secret Service did have a drone, but they didn't have anybody who could fly it. They had to call a tech support center on a 1-800 number. Let's watch.
Assassination tech support. This is Palmer. How can I help you?
Hey, it's Rafi. I got an ambulance and I can't get it up.
Let me direct you to one of our specialists.
A few moments later.
Yeah, I was telling the other guy, trunk is almost at the climax. I got a drone. I can't get it up.
You'd best get about 1,000 bottles of baby oil on that shit. You won't come correct.
So, you know what I'm saying. People could easily take a video of Yurik walking that was released weeks after the event. I think that could very easily be facial replacement of Thomas Crook's face on top of Yurik's body or anybody's body. But you're right, it introduced an anomaly in the timeline where certainly Crooks could not be in two places at 426. So one of those videos is obviously lying. I think what it reveals actually, Ken, is that both of those elements of photographic or video evidence are manufactured.
Interesting. Yeah, my only point was that it cast more suspicion on Nickel and Mirko's story. It's like, who did they see?
Absolutely.
Like really bizarre stuff. I will say that I think the FBI has officially stated that Mirko and Nickel were incorrect in identifying Crooks. Crooks actually was that guy on the other side of the site. You know, I don't trust the FBI. But it's worth mentioning.
Wait a minute. Whoa, go over that again. Hang on. Don't come off of that. So you're saying the FBI sees this picture that has been presented to us since the very first day as this is the image that Greg Nichols sent around that got everybody out of the building and running around looking for Crooks. Now the FBI says this is not Crooks?
Oh, sorry. No, it's not that picture of Crooks. It was like there was a text at 426 where I think the third sniper with Mirko and Crooks left and said, hey, he's looking up
Jason
at you
Woods.
guys, so he knows you're there. That whole text was not referring to Crooks.
You're talking about the crazy text where he's like, you see me with my rifle and you know that it's like, what is this? What does this text mean? That's Jason Woods who sends that text.
Okay,
you see me leaving with my rifle or something like that?
Yeah, and that could not have been referring to Crooks because as the FBI has officially stated, Crooks was the guy on the other side of the site.
Weird.
So, yeah, as far as the pictures go, I'm not sure, but the 426 text could not have been Crooks. Another interesting thing from this radio transcript is that if you look by 426, sorry, I should have had it ready. Another QRF Butler member also says that he sees Crooks. So there's two people gave a false identification around that time, which I had not known. I thought it was just Nickel that said that.
So here's 162632. That's 42610, Charlie. Just advising now that there are wheels down. Copy that. Wheels down. Reported mechanical just behind the stage. Medical, sorry. Huh.
Let's see.
I don't see that. 426.
Yeah, it might have been a little afterwards.
Good copy. It's also interesting they give you all these text documents that are not OCR, so you can't search them. Right?
Yeah, it's 1742 is where Nichols just said, just an FYI, we had a younger white male lurking around AGR. Yeah, I'll have to pull that later. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. But I mean, the point is there's a lot of radio traffic here, and they're giving us incomplete transcripts. Now, there's another, the audience cannot see this, but is this something that we want to show people?
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
No, but this is your home. Oh, that's your office or your.
That's just a mailing address. You can't, yeah, you can't find me there. That's just my little.
No problem. So this, what are we looking at here? This is Butler County District Attorney wrote you a letter.
This is their response for my request for the transcript, and they do admit that they make a redaction, and they at 1804, the name and description of a missing child is redacted.
Right.
However, if you look at the redaction, it's about 3 sentences or 3 lines long. And so I'm going to appeal that to try to say, you could redact the name of the kid, that's fine, but why are you redacting the entire communication log?
It's a good question.
Yeah, right there.
Oh yeah, look at that. It was so complex in how they were redacting. All units be advised. There is also that individual is headed towards Sheets. See, isn't that weird? Why would you be headed towards Sheets? It's kind of not that close. How do they know he's headed towards Sheets?
Yeah, that's the sheriff passing on information that he got erroneously from Nickel. So the originator of that rumor that Crooks was going to Sheets was Nickel, and then it got disseminated and confused all the locals. It looks like to me.
Huh. So Sheets, as you might recall, is a gas station where Dave Stewart used to work, right? You've been there. Yeah, we've discussed this.
Yeah, I have been there,
So
yep.
what do you think about this idea that why would somebody be going to Sheets? It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Now this is, if we're to take his word at good faith, I think Nickel might have thought that he was going all the way around the AGR building. Instead, he was headed into like one of those nooks and crannies that he then climbed up. That would be the innocuous explanation. I mean, if we're going to get conspiratorial here, the DHS Commission report released last week disclosed that there were 2 Pennsylvania State Police plainclothes officers at the Sheets at the time.
What the hell is that about?
That's we don't know, but if we're gonna assume bad faith, I mean, saying Crooks went to Sheets and then the locals see these plainclothes officers, I think one of them kind of looked like Crooks. If the plainclothes officers were the people we assume were those guys on the body cam footage, so it could have been just like intentional to confuse people. Still don't know. Yeah.
Now, see, this is American Glass research. Like, I don't think walking to, where is Sheets? It's like all the way over here, isn't it? This is
it's
Sheets.
on the northeast side.
It's pretty far. This is it, I think, right? This is the gas station.
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
there's
it.
the car wash. So, I mean, look at this. This is a far walk. Why would you be going all the way to Sheets? So, by the way, if you were planning a getaway, so I've been to this neighborhood now twice. If you were planning a getaway, I don't think you'd want to walk all the way to Sheets. Right out the front of American Glass Research is this sort of, I mean, this is way more accessible, and you're right there by the road. You could just jump out here. And I mean, any of these parking lots are kind of, I mean, look at all these other smaller places that you could go duck into and just drive away. Why would you walk all the way over there to Sheets?
It doesn't make any sense. And I just found there is a little footnote in the DHS report released last week where it says at 5:44 p.m., Pennsylvania State Police personnel received similar information. A local law enforcement, Secret Service, and PSP personnel all began to attempt to find and confront Crooks. And then there's a footnote on that sentence that says, this includes plainclothes PSP officers from Vice units stationed at a nearby Sheets gas station to the northeast of the AGR building. So, yeah, again, if there was better coordination, you would think that the plainclothes police officers would have been able to say, hey, we don't see anybody that looks like Crooks in our area. We've got this covered. Go search somewhere else. But, who knows?
Wow. So this is the October 15th this is a letter here. What is that report that your independent review panel report?
Yeah,
The
October
assassination
15th
That should be it,
report. Yes, that's it. Yeah.
right? Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
And so who created this report? DHS?
Yeah, and this is probably my favorite report, better than the House one, better than the Senate one. This is the one that has a lot of the radio communications in a timeline at the bottom, which raised questions as to, again, how did Nickel and Mirko not realize that Crooks was on the roof? Because Commander Lenz, according to this report, used the Ops Channel 4 at 6:11, about 15 seconds before the shooting, to say, hey, we've got a guy with a long gun on the roof. Well, Mirko and Nickel were both on that Ops Channel 4. So you could say 15 seconds isn't a long time, but as soon as they heard that somebody's on the roof, I'd be sticking my head out of the window. I mean, come on.
You'd think. And of course, Mirko is stationed. He should be looking right at the guy the second he gets on the roof, right? The whole thing is crazy.
Exactly.
Wouldn't it take you more than a second as a human to respond? How could the shots be fired at 6:11:33 and you're on the radio at 6:11? They should at least be 6:11:34. Like this incredible specificity, particularly when it seems wrong. It's just very suspicious to me.
Indeed. And I just found this report. I was telling you earlier how at around 4:26, it wasn't just Nickel that claimed to identify Crooks. It was a Butler ESU QRF, that's Quick Reaction Force officer, 4:30 p.m. He's located near the stage, which is interesting because, why didn't they get Trump off stage, an hour and a half later? But in any event, he says he's facing toward the AGR building, and he separately notices Crooks sitting on a short concrete wall outside of the AGR building. Well, no, he didn't recognize Crooks, because we already explained that Crooks, or whoever we think that guy was on the other side of the site. So it's not just Nickel that was wrong. It was a guy who wasn't up in the second floor post. He was on the ground.
But Ken, isn't it true that there are multiple individuals walking around AGR wearing the same clothing? And that can't be a coincidence. This is somebody who said, okay, you 3 or 4 or however many guys are going to wear, tan or white, whatever the color was, cargo shorts, this gray specific shirt from that tactical, whatever that company is. I mean, this is somebody putting people in wardrobe to walk around. And then we also have that shot. I had located a shot where, remember when we first started talking about somebody's walking around on the roof of American Glass Research? When they first released the police body camera videos, we got this of somebody walking on the roof. I don't know if you've seen this, but I've blown it up. We can see right there. It's clearly somebody walking on the roof. And elsewhere in this body cam footage, this is the same officer who captures what we believe are 2 drones taking off. Palmer Luckey thinks those are insects. Amazing imaging on that iPhone or the body cam from the cops to be able to see insects. But this is telling us about where Mirko and all the different snipers are located. Here's Butler ESU is Mirko in green, right? So he's in this window. How does Mirko not see somebody on the roof from this window? And he's never left that second floor window, has he? Or Mirko leaves the second floor?
Well, that's the thing. So I think it was Benny Johnson, who's kind of a conservative influencer, reported this scoop a couple days after July 13th, saying that Nickel went downstairs to go look for Crooks and he got locked out of the AGR building. And then Mirko went downstairs to let him in. And that's when the shooting happened. I mean, that sounded dubious when I heard
but there's
news.
No evidence of that, because we've got the whole entire dash cam video of the police car, and it shows Mirko emerges from the building. Here's the tweet I'm looking for. Mirko doesn't show his face outside that building until 6:13:26. 2 minutes after. He's the first guy to exit the building. We could, I'm not prepared with this right now, but we could go and look at the entirety of M500-010482, the Motorola dash cam, and you'll see none of that nonsense happens with him getting locked out and coming back in. I didn't see that.
Yeah, and I think the transcript officially puts Benny's scoop to bed. Because, again, Mirko is the one that radioed shooter is down, so he had to have been up on the second floor. He said he doesn't know where Nickel is. If we're to believe that, that at least means that we know he didn't go downstairs to let Nickel inside.
Right.
So I don't know who told that to Benny, but again, it seems like we got some disinformation artists among us.
Right. A lot of people trying to put some bad information down the pipe. Ken, this is amazing. I mean, you bring the goods, man. This is only our second show together, but I have to commend you. You're doing incredible work. People should definitely be following you on X and also reading your work on Headline USA. For people who aren't already following Ken, please do. You can find him on X at JD_cashless, and you can read his work on headlineusa.com. Is there anything else in the latest evidence that we haven't yet covered, Ken? What's going on here with Ralph? Yeah, they went to high school together. This is crazy.
Yeah, so the DOJ appointed a lawyer to prosecute Ryan Ralph, who went to high school with Judge Eileen Cannon, who's presiding over the case. Moreover, Judge Cannon went to the DOJ prosecutor's wedding, I think, like 8 years ago. So it's an obvious conflict of interest, and it raises the question, like, why would the DOJ make such a sloppy appointment? Are they trying to sabotage their own case for some reason, or did they make that appointment to force Eileen Cannon to recuse herself? I guess we're going to see, but it just is bizarre.
It is. I have a feeling Judge Cannon could avoid recusal if she wants to, because I had a case, people have heard about it quite a bit, where the judge, who is Judge Valerie Caproni, she had a 15-year-long, this judge who presided over the Swigert versus Goodman case, and then immediately after that, Emmys versus MSDI, which is a company it's a fake company named to fool me into getting into this lawsuit. It's named after a company I used to own. The point is, this woman was the FBI general counsel and appeared on a broadcast this guy was the executive producer of in 2009. Then in 2010, when Adam Sharp became Twitter's first U.S. government liaison, while Valerie Caproni was the FBI general counsel, this is when the FBI got inserted into Twitter. And I've raised all these elements of evidence, and they decided that this was insufficient to recuse. So I have a feeling that just going to high school with the guy, or even attending his wedding 8 years ago, it's not necessarily sufficient to recuse the judge. I agree with you that it's likely evidence that that's what the DOJ is trying to do. There's been a long, hard think going on about this Judge Cannon in Florida, and obviously the Get Trump crew doesn't like her because she's not one of these judges who I allege is under the control of the deep state or a member of it, in the way that Valerie Caproni is, and so many other judges that we've seen appear to be. And it's going to be an interesting sort of fight to see play out.
Yeah, I think maybe in your case, it just wasn't as high profile, so you won't have, like, I could see Democratic Congress people writing letters complaining
absolutely
that Cannon
right.
presiding. So
You're right.
I think
that'll put a lot of pressure on her.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of public pressure.
I agree with that, Ken. Any other stories you want to tell us about?
Yeah, real quick. I had a final determination yesterday. The Bethel Park denied my request for the 911 audio that Crooks's parents purportedly made to police on the day of the shooting.
Why?
We still don't know if it was before or after. So we've talked about this, I think, on your last show, where there's a public interest clause saying that, 911 calls aren't subject to disclosure, but if a law enforcement agency or a court deems it to be in the public interest, it can be released. So I argued in my appeal, well, this is clearly in the public interest for disclosure for all the obvious reasons. But the appeals officer said, well, the law specifically states that it has to be a law enforcement agency or a court to declare it in the public interest. The law enforcement agency says it's not in the public interest. I don't have any power to change their mind. It's going to have to go to a court. So I can say I am in discussion with a lawyer about actually filing a lawsuit and petitioning the Pennsylvania courts to declare it in the public interest to get the phone call of Crooks's parents.
That's pretty interesting. Now, what is it that the Intercept got? It's not the parents, because you even commented that it seems like there's not that much here, but it was good work by them to get it.
Yeah, and these were the actual 911 calls that were made in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. So it's just like panic rally goers saying, hey, we've got an active shooter here. And the dispatcher says, yes, we know. We've gotten like 50 calls about this. The most interesting call, in my opinion, was somebody who I think was friends of Jim Copenhaver's wife, who said that we thought he was going to be taken to Butler Hospital. We can't get a hold of him. Where is he? It turns out that he had been sent to Allegheny Hospital in Pittsburgh. Not the most groundbreaking stuff, but it was interesting to hear kind of that going on internally.
And they probably did that because I would imagine the Pittsburgh hospital is going to be a more sophisticated, like obviously if you've got huge injuries, they want you at a more capable hospital. So Ken, how can people support your work to help you with these right to know lawsuits? I know you want people to visit Headline USA and click on the different articles that you're writing. Is that still the best way to do it?
That's still the best way. And yeah, thanks for generously promoting my work. It was great talking to somebody who actually is into this as deep as I am. When I try to talk, even other conservative reporters or congressional staffers, they really don't know what I'm talking about when I'm getting into all these kind of tangential threads and really deep rabbit holes with this case. So thanks again.
Well, and thank you for the work that you're doing, Ken. It really is groundbreaking, and you are at the tip of the spear. I'm so delighted that we've met, and thanks for coming back on the show. I want to remind people that they can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth by going to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, or subscribestar.com, or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Ken, I look forward to having you back soon, and we're obviously going to continue to communicate back and forth. Thanks very much for what you're doing, and thanks everybody for watching. Have a great day.